The Seeking Eye Life Exploration podcast is and will always be free to access. But if you would like to support my work, please consider joining my Patreon or signing up on YouTube as a channel member. By doing so, you will receive exclusive benefits, including early access to future podcast episodes, access to hosted discussion groups, and access to non-podcast supplementary videos. So click the join button underneath this video to join as a YouTube channel member, or find the link to my Patreon page in the description. Thank you.
I'm actually a second generation psychic medium. Although my mom or dad were never practicing, they did have the gift as well. I've always known I was different, always known I had a gift, something, early on I remember thinking that everybody saw these kind of things. But I did learn early on that most people didn't. I believe this was my calling from a young age, being that I went through a very traumatic childhood. In coming out of that like I did, I believe is one of the reasons why I'm able to do what I do, is making that kind of connection. I did have a coma about 18 years ago. That kind of reaffirmed the path that I've known for some time that I was supposed to be on. I was in a coma. It was about 18 years ago. I was in ICU for 36 days and in the hospital for almost 3 months. They said I wasn't going to make it. Ex-wife was ready to sign the papers. So it was that serious. But I believe God showed me the other side during that experience. And when I woke up on the other side, it was the most profound experience anybody could have, or any human being, certainly, because you go from thinking, wondering, guessing to knowing that God is real and that the afterlife is real as well. You take that out of your vocabulary, life is different. From that point on, I started seeing more direction with my path as a psychic medium, and it became clearer on what I was supposed to be doing after the coma. It's kind of like that ignited me. I knew on some level I'd be doing this wanted to do it or needed to do it, but that was kind of the catalyst that just shot me out and just said, this is what I was supposed to be doing.
So you've had kind of your experiences with two different phenomena, which is the mediumship, of course, and a near-death experience. Do you remember your near-death experience?
Like it was yesterday. I remember opening my eyes on the other side and seeing everything that we see as human beings. But one of the things I have a difficulty with is articulating the colors, because they were so vibrant and undefinable from human perspective. But it was just such a vibrant thing, and I could feel the life in everything, even the grass. I remember, like, you can feel this connectivity that we have to the universe on a soul level. And they say we do now. I mean, we're all connected on a soul level. I believe that, and you feel it when you get to the other side. I didn't want to leave. I was with my mom, my aunt. I remember the freedom, and also remember the instant knowing. Like, you don't get to the other side and think. It's like, where are we? What is this? No, it's instant knowing, and everything makes sense all of a sudden. And that's, that freedom from the body was unbelievable, an unbelievable feeling.
It's often described as such. Do you remember at all kind of the early stages of the typical NDE coming out of your body in the hospital room, or was it straight into that transient area?
I remember there was a little bit of a path that I rarely talk about, leading to that. Once I went into the coma, it wasn't initially, it wasn't all butterflies and rainbows. Something negative hit me right out of the gate. And I believe it was part of some things I would have to deal with in my life review, which I know we all have. I think it was showing me that. And some of the things that I saw were scary, but then it instantly went to what I was supposed to see. I think it gave me a healthy understanding and belief of what the afterlife is. It can be negative and positive for some.
Are you happy to go into some of the negative things that you saw? Because I really get a chance to talk to people who have had that side, and it does happen with the negative experiences.
Yeah, it was almost as if it was a dream state of things that I may have said or done to people that could have been deemed wrong or hurtful. I went and experienced them quickly, almost like a movie reel where it was so fast. That's how I remember it. And it didn't feel good at all, which I believe needed to happen, because when I came out of the coma, I had a different perspective on my life, my path, and everything in general. So I don't feel I was ever a really bad person. I really don't believe that. But again, the life review isn't about that. It's about everything you did in this life. According, we all have a contract. That review is to see how much you accomplished with that contract, because not everybody, in my opinion, achieves everything they sign up for in their life. So sometimes we have karmic debt, they call it, where we have to come back and because we didn't complete something in a previous life. Those are things that I see.
And just to play kind of devil's advocate on the other side, if I were to suggest that, well, this was just a fragment of your imagination, a figment of your imagination as a result of the being in the coma state, your brain was doing all sorts of weird things, and the drugs they were giving you, it was all just fantasy. What would you say to that?
Well, I've dealt with fantasy before. I was familiar. There's a lot of little stories. I was on the other side before. When I was 18, I was jumped, what a long story, and beaten pretty badly, trying to save my friend. But and I remember being out of my body at that point and looking over the operating table at the doctors and watching them do what they were doing to me. I've had Jesus, in my opinion, put his hands on me when I was a small boy. I've always had these kind of miraculous things that I've seen and experienced that were not what typical people are experiencing. You understand that?
I do, and that would make sense if you're naturally sensitive to spiritual matters as well.
Mm-hmm. So,
because that means you're naturally more open to these other frequencies, so to speak.
And a lot of people go into comas and don't come back with a story. It wasn't a story. It was something that right out of the gate, it was something I just couldn't stop talking. Nurses were lining up out the door literally because they saw I was awake and wanted to hear my story. It was real. It was very real. There's never been nothing. You can't have a professor in New York was going to Istanbul. Really quick story. She asked me about how her trip was going to go. I said, well, you're going to come upon a square. This was psychic. You're going to come upon a square. There's going to be dancing and music and singing. You're going to want to go see what they're doing, but instantly run the other way, I told her. So she came to that square. She said she saw my face because she wanted to go see what they were all doing. She went the other way, and she said there was a suicide bomber detonated a bomb right after she left. And she said she owed her life to me. All I did was that I saw something psychically, helped her to prevent it. That's what I do for most of my clients that want that type of help. I'm tuned into the world like that. And all I did was implant a deja vu, gave her the impression in the moment, and she was told to go the other way and did. So I think it had to happen, the coma.
What was your previous career?
Well, I had a remodeling company.
That's very different from...
Yeah, very different, stressful. I wanted out of it. So, I worked both jobs for years, doing the psychic medium and that work just to work my way out of that because I knew this was my calling.
And certainly you've reached many people. You do live shows as well and quite big events?
Well, I tend to keep, I've been offered to do gallery readings, it's called, but I've turned them down in the past, mostly because I view what I do not as a spectacle, but as life-changing for some people. And I'm here to help, and I'm not consider myself a show or a spectacle. I've looked at it that way. I know there's other schools of thought on that, but for me, this is private what I do, and the kind of connections I make speak for themselves.
And I think those that do the big gallery readings, etc., and certainly on television and things like that, you're always going to run into they're just doing it for money argument, and they're charging ridiculous amounts for tickets, etc., which is fair enough with some of the the more well-known people because it's just popular demand. But again, that has always kind of turned me off as well, I must admit.
Yeah. We're under the people have the perception that some people I've gotten emails, oh, you have a gift from God, you're supposed to be using it, why are you charging? Yeah, but we have to live too. There's There's a way. If I'm going to be doing this work, I have to survive. So
Yeah, the government doesn't just wipe out your mortgage because you're a medium.
yeah, right. There you go.
How do you approach it? Because most people that think of mediumship, who haven't really looked into it but just kind of heard it on the side, immediately, well, nonsense, look at James Randi, cold reading. It's all cold reading. It's all kind of they're researching you beforehand or they're lucky guessing, etc. What's your response to that?
I've heard them all.
Suggestion.
I've heard of them. I heard them all. I've heard that psychics use tells. I have. So how I dispelled that is I do phone readings where I only am looking at a picture of someone. I have nothing, no prior knowledge of the person, only a connection on the phone. And a lot of my reviews, I should say, if you read them, they were on the phone. So there is no tells on the phone. There's none of that stuff. Looking at someone like a poker player, that's how I dispel that is, the phone. How do you explain that? If you're basing it off of like tells or guessing, certainly you're gonna, there's some things that somebody would have a million chances to take a guess at that I've gotten on a one try, and they would never get it. And that's probably more the norm than no. That guessing aspect of this is pretty stupid. It might be right for some, it might apply, but if you're getting too deep into this with so many thousands, I've done over 70,000 people. If you're just guessing, and Darren, not only that, I wanted to point out something that I've talked about recently, and that is, I've done what I've done. I do about 300 readings a month, and I've done over 70,000 readings in my career. And I've done it all without social media exposure or advertising. It's all been word of mouth. So do you think that people are going to be spreading the word of mouth so much, like to this degree, if something was wrong or false or he's guessing? Somewhere along the line, somebody's going to say that or suggest it. The internet.
Yeah.
So this is all done
sure.
the traditional way, word of mouth. So under the premise that if you do good work for someone, they tell 3 people. But if you do bad work for someone, they tell 15. That's how I operate. So certainly the buzz out there, algorithm, if you will, would be a much different if it was just guessing or whatever they're saying. So, and most people judge what I do on what they've heard, not from an experience. So you're out there basing something because you heard something from a friend, and that's where it comes from. But I've done some readings for some of the most cerebral men, one of the leading brain surgeons in this country, PhDs, doctors, psychiatrists, priests. If people saw some of my clientele, they would have much more open minds, some of them certainly, to what I do. The biggest resolution people have about what I do is church, Bible, God says it in the Bible. It's taboo. But I've had pastors, ministers, heads of church come for guidance. It's a new era, I always look at it like, people like me have been around for centuries, forever. Old kings, leaders, heads of countries have always had mages in the old days. They have them today too. I worked with the head of Barack Obama's ethics committee for 3 years. She was getting sessions with me and guiding her.
While they were in power?
Yes. So I'm not saying anything that I did was used. No, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's the same
These are
today
serious
as
people.
it was thousands of years ago with kings and knights and all that stuff. So the same thing exists today. It's just more low key because people don't want people to know they talk to me mostly.
And when I had a medium with a mediumship reading with bless her, Carol, I'm always
Carol
Carol Hall.
Oh.
You're probably I think she's mainly over here. She's quite private as well, but I made sure that I did kind of everything below the radar. So I gave her a false name, didn't say anything about Seeking Eye or anything else, just to have a completely blank slate. So there was no way she could know anything about me, and she was pretty dead on. So that is very interesting because I mean, this is when I was in the early stages of writing my book, and I hadn't told anyone about that, and she picked up on that, and just little things. And it's not so much just because if you look at me, you could reasonably guess that my grandparents have passed over, or at least one grandparent has passed over based on my age. But there are certain things that require so in-depth coincidence to be true, just purely from a guessing point of view, that it just becomes unreasonable to assume that anything other than there's generally some kind of picking up some kind of information here. And that's what I found with Carol.
Nice. Yeah, I attribute all this to raising or lowering of our vibration, Darren. When we're able to raise our vibration, we have a healthy and much different view and outlook on life and spiritualism than we do as a low vibrational person. And there's ways and methods to raise our vibration that will give you an understanding and a clarity on this as well. I'm able to raise my vibration up. It slows the information down that's around people. That's how I view it. I call it the information superhighway above people. And if you raise your vibration up high enough, you slow that down, and I pick words and things out of that and make sentences. That's how I operate.
So that would be more from a psychic point of view rather than a mediumship one.
Yes, but I am a psychic medium. There's a difference. Some mediums are not psychic. I think you have to be a psychic to be a medium to a degree, but they're not making predictions necessarily. You know, they're just reading the spirits or whatever.
So how does psychic readings work? Because most people are familiar with the concept of mediumship being where you're getting information from someone who's passed over. But I think it's a lot less obvious as to how mediumship readings work in terms of energies and what that even means and what vibration means and that sort of thing. So how would you describe
the psychic
that?
Reading is usually someone who's wants information, wants it now, or they're planning something, a venture, a business venture, relationship. They want a psychic impression on that, not a medium reading. But what people don't know, with me particularly, when I'm reading someone, I'm actually tuning into their guides and whatever loved ones are around there without even identifying them. So I'm getting the information about their life, and I'll pull stuff out and give it to them to gain trust, and so that they will believe me when I tell them, don't do this, don't go there. And if you've seen some of my reviews, there's people out there that said they owe their lives to me. Basically, them being psychic and implanting what I call deja vu in their head. There was a teacher, a professor in New York was going to Istanbul. Really quick story. She asked me about how her trip was going to go. I said, well, you're going to come upon a square. This was psychic. You're going to come upon a square. There's going to be dancing and music and singing. You're going to want to go see what they're doing, but instantly run the other way, I told her. So she came to that square. She said she saw my face because she wanted to go see what they were all doing. She went the other way, and she said there was a suicide bomber detonated a bomb right after she left. And she said she owed her life to me. All I did was I saw something psychically, helped her to prevent it. That's what I do for most of my clients that want that type of help. I'm tuned into the world like that. And all I did was implant a deja vu, gave her the impression in the moment, and she was told to go the other way and did. So there's many stories like that.
Yeah. So she, when she was in that position, then she had that experience personally. She had that experience of deja vu, remembering what you had mentioned, and then decided to follow that. Is that what? Am I getting that right?
Yes. Yes. When you can give somebody an exact image of something that's coming, it gives a deja vu. I said, music, dancing, singing, loud. You're going to want to go see. So all those impulses happen all in that exact second, and she had very little time to react, but she did, obviously. And
very interesting.
Yeah. So the difference with psychic, the psychic makes predictions. Mediumship is connecting to loved ones. They do work hand in hand. Most people don't realize that a lot of what the loved ones that cross over want is for the people to get out of their own way and live good, healthy, happy lives. But because our people that pass certainly know, because they're there, they're on the other side. They've already done this. But the problem is most people can't raise their vibration up enough to tune into them and hear them.
So I think I know you're limited on time, so I want to ask two important questions, I think. So
Sure.
how would you define, because they're terms that are used a lot with psychic and medium and anything spiritual, but is somewhat of a vague, general kind of idea of what they mean. And that's vibration and frequency. And three, and energy. So how would you define those terms in terms of kind of in a way that most people can
Vibration,
understand?
energy, and what?
Vibration, energy, and frequency.
Oh, well, I believe that the universe does not recognize our wants or our needs. I believe the universe recognizes and matches our frequency. I would have to say that most people out there vibrating in their solar plexus, to me, which is their problems, they're staying stuck in them. That gives us our feeling of being stuck. The universe reciprocates that same vibration back. As negative as it is, that's what you're going to get. If you change things, in my opinion, and it's worked, I don't know how many times, Darren, with the mentorships that I do with people, if you can ask and look in the mirror and say, okay, I don't like this, I don't like that, I'm going to stop doing this. When you start changing the patterns of your life that were negative and didn't serve you, you instantly change the vibration the universe gives to you, and it gives you much more positive feeling and much more confidence. Your self-esteem rises.
So when you say the universe will give you a more positive vibration, what does that mean? What does that vibration word mean?
You're putting that out there. You're saying, okay, I'm overweight, for instance. I want to lose 10 pounds. You're now addressed it. You don't have to change any of your problems overnight. You just are now acknowledging, addressing them, and coming up with a plan to change some things. Instantly, you will get victories on your path because the universe wants you to succeed. That's because your vibration changed. You're not going to get a lot of victories if you're vibrating in a low level in your solar plexus and constantly in depression and anxiety and sadness and woe is me. No, it works that way. You're going to continually get that, unfortunately, until you make the decision. You're done. You surrender. It's the same thing that the alcoholics go through.
Yeah, and I haven't had experience with depression and anxiety both, and still in that vibration, I suppose, would work for that term. And I know you said you've had a difficult childhood, so I imagine you've been there as well before. It's incredibly difficult because depression is a, it puts a shadow over every experience you have and shows it in a more negative light, or you experience it in a more negative light. So how, if you're under depression, the influence of depression and anxiety, can you possibly change that vibration when everything is naturally...
Good question. And see, when somebody's isolating, depressed, and in their head like that, what they're doing is they're creating a narrative of their world, which usually is not accurate. What I do, hopefully, is to point out the little things that are easy, that aren't seemingly easy to the person who's in thralls of what I'm talking about. But if you can give a human being, in my opinion, some victories on small levels of something that they said or thought, convinced themselves was so bad, that process has changed lives, because they're now seeing that, okay, this was wrong. What else was I wrong about? We can go back in and pull out other little things that they were also wrong. What other narratives were you wrong about? Doing that kind of work, to me, has helped a lot of people. Getting the victories, Darren, that's all they needed. That positive, something happening that's positive, because they're not getting a lot of it. And then ultimately what's been happening is they're seeing that some of these other things were equally as wrong. And that's it's been how people have been growing.
Experientially, yeah, because once they see it in a different light, and they see that what they had previously interpreted was illusionary.
Yes. We can get them to get these victories within themselves. That's when healing begins. I'm more of a fan of Adler, not Freud. Adler was one that wanted to build community and deal with mental health on an individual basis. What happened to you? Why did it happen? How were you affected by it? But what growth came from it? There's a lot of positive things that can happen from trauma in my experience. Build a community around them of support, love, kindness, right? Understanding. Not Freud's keep coming back to therapy over and over and over and over again and keep paying us. We're going to keep rehashing your traumas, but as long as you keep paying us. He thrived today, right, with Big Pharma. To me, I don't know that there's a benefit to rehashing traumas. That's my experience, my belief. I know that everything happens for a reason, and I highly doubt. I have yet, and all the people I've met, Darren, I've yet to find someone that had a little worse trauma than me. from my childhood. It was pretty rough seeing my mom beaten with a belt from a dad. I mean, it doesn't get much more traumatic. But coming out of that and wearing it as a badge of honor today, anybody can do it. Because I was in the depths of despair and huddled in a fetal position in the closet many nights, scared to death. That's my childhood memories.
And during a time where you're the most influential as a child.
Yes. So
very important. So I suppose, again, very importantly, can we just define the two remaining terms? I think it was energy and frequency.
Mm-hmm. Energy is actually the vibration that people give off. Like a low energy, like somebody who's sad, depressed, negative, talking bad about people, gossiping, that gives you a low energy. You're vibrating a very low energy. What was the other thing you said?
Frequency.
Oh, frequency. The frequency is simple as what you're putting out there. We're emitting frequencies. All of us are. The universe, like I said, is only matching what we're putting out there. I see that. And if anyone can challenge this through positive affirmation or changing one little thing, a word you use, anything, and just from that scale, you could even see what I'm talking about, because you'll get a victory by just reversing one little thing. Then maybe it'll make you go inside and realize some of the other things you feared had nothing to be afraid of. Anxiety is always about something that hasn't happened. You're anxious. You're about to do something. What are you anxious about? The future? How do you know the future? The outcomes are usually not what's anticipated by the anxious person.
No, for sure. And especially in my case, talking from my perspective, my anxiety is very health-based, fear of dying. So, and unfortunately as a result of the anxiety, I get it very physically. So I get physical symptoms like IBS, like dizziness, like sweating, etc. And so whenever I get like a stomach pain or a day of looser bowel movements than I'd like, that immediately goes to there's something seriously wrong in the bowel, or there's something seriously wrong in my head or something, and you're going to die.
Yep.
So then that puts me in this spiral, because then that anxiety causes the symptoms to get worse. And so I definitely know what it's like to be stuck in that kind of that mindset, and how impossible it seems to get out of it, especially when it's a physical thing like that.
Especially when you're all alone. You don't have a really big support group around you, Darren. That's part of the problem.
But then, yeah, true. But my mum is equal to like 100 people, to be honest. But yeah,
that's why you're still sitting here.